I can't check a table of contents. I can't go to the index and figure out what am I supposed to do in XYZ situation, let alone being a business owner and a manager of people. Like, when we were growing up, adults had all the answers, right? Your parents, your coaches, your teachers. You kind of assumed, in a sense, that life came with a rule book or a playbook. But then you grow up, you go to college, or you don't, or you start, you join the workforce, you get married, you get kids, you get married, and your spouse doesn't have the answers either. Where were you on this one, Tamika? Like she's like, I thought you knew. Shit. Okay, well let's figure it out. And you realize like there's no damn rule book. There's no playbook. Welcome to DFW Grit. I'm Dr. James Taylor and I'm your host, and this is more than just a podcast. We dive into the stories of the movers, the shakers, the small business owners, the entrepreneurs, right here in the DFW Metroplex. This is your home for authentic, real stories that prove what happens when you don't back down. Let's get to work. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of DFW Grit. As always, I am your host, Dr. Taylor. Point to me, point to the screen, point to the screen, point to me. So it's been a week. We are in the thick of it as far as summer is concerned. This is the vacations are going on. It's hotter than all hell. It's only going to get hotter. It's just school's like a month out. It's forever away, but it's right around the corner. It's been an interesting week, and as I've been going through this, not necessarily like this being this week, but just this whole podcasting thing, this whole adulting thing, I feel I've become more observant, and I had the wonderful pleasure of recording a future episode earlier this week. It's a guy named Kyle, and it was just it was an awesome episode. It went nowhere where I thought it was going to go, but it went everywhere that it needed to go. And it was cool because we're about the same age, and we're at very similar stages in life. We have kids on or about the same age, and we just got off on this topic that I want to kind of touch on here today, but also at the same time encourage you to watch when that episode comes up. So, at what point, if you ever had I'll say pleasure because it's the only one coming to mind. At what point were you at, if you've ever had the pleasure to experience the realization that everybody is just making it up? Like, you kind of look around as an adult and you ask yourself, does anybody know what the hell they're doing? Like, God, don't even go to the airport. Just don't go to the airport. Nobody there knows what the hell's going on, or a good majority of people. But like, generally speaking, in adulthood, have you reached that point yet where you look around and you just wonder, does anyone know what's happening? And anybody at all? So, like I said, I was having this conversation with this future guest, if you will. There's a little peek behind the curtain, little spoiler alert. I've got a bunch of interviews set up, ready to go. But when I leapfrog them and I do these solos, I try to do these solos more current time, more present day, if you will. Because I like to talk about what's on my mind. I don't want it to get stale, per se. So I'm using a future interview to set up a current day podcast, if you will. But no, it was a good conversation with a fellow dad who's going. I would say he's going through some changes. That sounds pubescent. But he's going through intentional changes. He's kind of a reinventioning, if you will, because one day he just decided, you know what, why am I doing all of this stuff in life this particular way? It's because, that's how I was brought up. That's what I was told to do, but I don't want to do it this way. I want to do it my way. And that's what he's doing. And it's awesome. So like, before we get into this, I want to, I guess, kind of set the stage. Because when we were kids, when I was a kid, I guess I can't speak for any of you, but when I was a kid, we looked to adults as for certainty, right? They knew what to do. They were the adults. But in all reality, in hindsight now, like I would hope to think that they were really just figuring it out too. And all they did was they kept it from us. Those sons of bitches. They kept it from us, that they didn't know what was going on. I ask you a question, you give me an answer right away. Like I've had this conversation with my dad in the past. Dad, if you don't know the answer, just tell me you don't know. Now, I want to say I was 30 before I had the strength to mutter those words to him, or in my 30s. But like generally speaking, I asked a question, mom and dad would have an answer. I don't know how often, I didn't necessarily keep score. I don't know how often it was the right answer, but they had an answer. And now as an adult, shit, I got questions. Should be a tagline in itself. As an adult, I have questions. And I look around and like there's nobody to ask. There's no manual to page through. I can't check a table of contents. I can't go to the index and figure out what am I supposed to do in XYZ situation, let alone being a business owner and a manager of people. Like, when we were growing up, adults had all the answers, right? Your parents, your coaches, your teachers. You kind of assumed, in a sense, that life came with a rule book or a playbook. But then you grow up, you go to college, or you don't, or you start, you join the workforce, you get married, you get kids, you get married, and your spouse doesn't have the answers either. Where were you on this one, Tamika? Like she's like, I thought you knew. Shit. Okay, well let's figure it out. And you realize like there's no damn rule book, there's no playbook. And it was, I won't say it was the first time that I didn't, or that I realized people didn't really know what was going on per se, but I've talked in past episodes how I sold books door to door. And so I had a bunch of kids from Minnesota and Wisconsin. They put us out in California. And what they had us do, if you didn't catch past episodes, hey, wherever they stuck you, they said start with the low income neighborhoods first. At the beginning of the summer, you take a down payment for these books that you're selling. And then as summer goes on, ideally, it gives them time to save up to pay off the rest at the end of summer. And the summer went on, you kind of moved more and more into the affluent neighborhoods. And I remember with the same kind of clarity, if you will, that I remember like 9/11. I was having a call. I called home. I was talking to dad. I was like, hey, how's the summer going? And I don't recall what the books cost that I was selling. It was a number with a comma in it. So I remember I was sitting on the phone with my dad, and he was asking me how the summer was going. And I was I'll say frustrated. I was frustrated. It was the beginning of the summer, and I had a good number of people. I got a lot of no's, which is going to happen in door to door sales. But a good number of people that couldn't do any kind of a down payment, and it was weird. Not that I, in any way, shape, or form, grew up in the lap of luxury or affluence. And hell, maybe to the betterment of my upbringing. Like I knew we were coupon cutting people, if you will. But like I would like to think like if it came down to it, my folks could come up with a couple $100. And I remember having this conversation with my dad being like, it's surprising how many people don't have a couple $100. And it was kind of like in that moment where he was like, well, hey, we didn't always have a couple $100 either. And it's just like I had just always assumed that, adults had money. And is as a 19-year-old, I didn't think a couple $100 was too much money to kind of have on hand, sort of thing. Because I mean, I would get the opposition of, hey, we can't afford it right now. We can't afford that down payment. I thought it was weird, but also I thought it was weird just because of my simple lack of life experience as a quote unquote adult, which I guess, you would be considered at 19 years old. But it was interesting because I had this idea that at the bare minimum, adults could have a couple $100. Now, don't get me wrong, I have certainly reached many a point in my life where I didn't have a couple $100 as an adult. But again, as a 19-year-old kind of entering adulthood and, you know, encountering other fellow adults, if you will, and they're like, no, I don't have a couple $100. I thought we were supposed to. We're adults. We're supposed to have a couple $100, aren't we? Like, I don't know. It's just, it was an interesting roadblock. No, not roadblock. A coming of age moment in a sense. I'm not entirely sure, but that was one of the first times where I was like, interesting. I thought adults would have that. I thought they'd have that figured out. Like they'd say hey, I want these books for my kids. They seem really cool. They seem really good. They could help them in school. Cool. I'm going to need a couple $100 from you to put a down payment. We don't have a couple $100. Really? Like you're an adult. I I thought that's something adults would have. Now, in the same thing, there's people who wouldn't have a couple $100 again, because I've been through those situations too. But you would pretend like you did, like you did have a couple $100, and then what happens when you pretended like you had a couple $100? Then when the time came when you actually needed a couple $100, you didn't have it because you were too busy pretending. Now, that can be money. Hell, that can just be information. That could be what you put out to the world around you, pretending like you're something you're not. Like, fake confidence is heavy. But the thing is, like, you're not fooling anybody except yourself. And sometimes you don't even know that you're fooling yourself until it's too goddamn late. And now you're committed to this thing, this angle, this persona, um, that you're not too terribly fond of anymore. It's almost like you need to give yourself the freedom to say, you know what, I don't know. I don't know how to act. I don't know how to look. I don't know the answer to your question, but I'm figuring it out. Because again, like I'm figuring out this whole parenthood thing. I got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. And within the last year, if just being silly with kids, they have started to say things like, that's embarrassing. Now, I don't entirely remember the first time I got embarrassed, but I don't remember it being kindergarten. I don't remember it being second grade. It's interesting that retort, that rebuttal to a request of mine to my kids. No, I don't want to do that, Dad. That's embarrassing. It came earlier than I assumed it would. Now, at the same time, like we're talking about the freedom of saying, you'll figure it out. I'm figuring out this embarrassing thing for my kids. I'm figuring out this whole parenting thing for me. But at the same time, on a flip side, like I have developed a tremendous amount of power as I'm becoming more aware of the fact that we're all making it up. And I realized this I'd say within the last 3 or 4 years, give or take, I have this wonderful ability to say no. Period. End of sentence. Do you have no power? Do you have NO power? Because I think that's power that comes with the confidence in being an adult, is no power. Someone asks you a question. Do you have the power to just say no? Not like say no to drugs, just say no, but like say no without any explanation, without any excuse, without any, what's the opposite of preamble? Postamble? Whatever, without any conclusion. Hey, can you give me a ride to the airport? No. It's not that I'm mean. Maybe I've got stuff to do or something like that, or just maybe I don't want to. You have no power? Like, I think that is a tremendous power to hold in being an adult, is the power to just say no. And not just say no to your kids and not say no because I said so, but to say no to whatever it is that you don't like, which is what Kyle and I are getting onto, is just the power to make decisions and not have to explain it. That's a tremendous amount of power. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present and you have to be willing. And kind of going back to the kids thing, maybe willing to be a little embarrassed. Because there is a little bit of embarrassment and I can't speak for you again, I'm just speaking for me, but like maybe even embarrassment isn't the word, but like I feel we feel like we have to justify ourselves so often, even with a simple response to a question when the response is no. Can you do this for me? No. And here's why. I don't have to tell you why. For some reason, I feel like I should. And the power to not do that is awesome. So I'll put that out there right now. Here's your challenge for the next episode. Tell somebody no, and then stop talking. It's fun. So what happens when you let go of the script? What happens when you let go of these things that we feel like we should do or we're supposed to do or we're supposed to know how to do, i.e. this whole adulthood thing? Like that's where real life starts. It's awesome to make your own decisions, because making your own decisions, making a decision is really the hardest part. We got onto that topic too. Like we're always faced with decisions. constantly. And sometimes we're faced with hard decisions, even though it's a hard decision about a thing that we want to do, a path we want to walk, a life we want to lead. And sometimes we put those hard decisions to the side until they get an opportunity to make themselves. And when a decision gets an opportunity to make itself, it might not always be the exact outcome that you wanted. But at least when you decide to make a decision, does that make sense? When you decide to make a decision, at the very least, you have a modicum of control. You might even be just an infinitesimally small amount of control, but it's the control to go right instead of left, because that's the decision you made. We talked in his interview about how he kind of traded one identity for another. The identity, and we all have the same decision, the identity that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing what I was told to do, right? I'm told to work 9 to 5, come home, sit down, have my wife or kid bring me a beer, crack it open, throw on some trash TV, and want not to be bothered. Like Al Bundy, if you will. I watched a lot of Married with Children growing up. I heard a lot of times before I turned 18, when you're 18, you're out of the house. Now, 18 was a code word for when you graduate, but still, it was an interesting time. And then I went out of the house. I went to college because I was supposed to go to college. I did all this stuff because I was supposed to do this stuff. I got a coach to tell me how to run a business, and I ran a business the way he told me to run the business. And it worked out, but it wasn't exactly the way I wanted it to work out. But now I'm starting to make decisions based on what I want to do in the life I want to live. And I'll tell you what, it's terrifyingly fun because I don't know where those decisions are going to lead me. But now I know neither do you. Neither do you. Neither does any one of us. Nobody knows where these decisions are taking us. So we're just, we're just trying our best. And that is a whole lot more fun than assuming that there's supposed to be some outcome, something at the end, some end goal where I am supposed to finish. But nobody's told me where that is. Now, if we just know, hey, there's really no end goal, you're just supposed to be trying your best the whole time and put a smile on your face and make the decisions that you're able to make, that makes this whole thing a whole lot easier. So most pivots don't start with a roadmap, right? They literally just start with a decision. And sometimes that decision is, I'm tired of doing it this way because it's not my way. That pivot can just be, hey, I'm going to do things my way now. So how do we do these things? Just real quick to try and wrap this whole thing up. If you're busy, get still. Get still for a little while and try and do it somewhat routinely. Stay put, write things down. Get still and just try and figure out your next step. What is one step I can take today that is more me? A little trick I got from one of my coaches, Sean Dill. He starts and ends every day with his question, concern, obstacle, and opportunity. What question is he trying to answer? What concern does he have about where he's going? What obstacle might be in the way that he's trying to overcome? And what opportunity is he looking for? I try and do those exact same things. I don't do it probably with the same regularity he does, but that is a wonderful opportunity to get still and just try to reframe everything that you might have drifted away from in your regular day-to-day stuff. Because you're never going to get true clarity, right? There's never going to be, you can, but it's going to be, I'm going to say it'll be short-sighted clarity. You'll know what your next couple of steps are, but you don't know what step 100 is. But you'll be able to get to step 100 through the clarity of steps 1, 2, and 3. And when you're on step 3, the clarity of 4, 5, and 6 will show up. And when you're on 6, the clarity of 7, 8, and 9 will show up. So you're building clarity through movement. You're building clarity through these decisions. Now, I want you to know as you're doing this, you're going to feel lost, and you're not lost. I felt this way myself, and I have to remind myself of this. You're not lost, man. You're just at the part where the instructions have stopped. And when you realize that, it makes it a whole lot easier because once again, everybody's just making it up. There's power in admitting, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. That's how everything worthwhile begins. Is you decide, you know what? I'm just going to find out. I'm going to find out and I'm going to figure it out are basically the same thing. So here's the truth. The adults you admired were just old kids doing their best. And if you're anywhere around, my age, you're doing the same thing. The difference now, you get to write down your own story, but only if you stop waiting for permission to do it. So let this episode be a reminder that you're not broken, you're just building something. And the thing is, you don't have instructions on how to build it. But the best part about that is none of us do. So if this hits home, I want you to listen to that episode coming down the road with Kyle. His story will remind you that literally, like, we're all doing the exact same thing. And his story, much like my story, much like every story I've told here, will give you an opportunity to learn more by accident than elsewhere by design. Right here on DFW Grit. So as always, my friends, like, share, follow, keep building, even if you don't know what the hell it is that you're doing. Oddly enough, this is a wonderful little way to wrap it up. You know what I'm going to do when I leave here? I'm going to go home and I'm going to play some Legos because that's what I was doing before I got here. Because I do have, and this is not to brag or boast, I do have a couple $100. And the other day I was scrolling through Amazon and I found a Lego set of Johnny Five from Short Circuit. And I definitely impulse bought that son of a bitch, and it arrived the other day. I'm halfway through it. I'm going to go home and keep building my Legos. Now, the beauty of the whole thing is that thing came with instructions, which is great because it's got a lot of small pieces. But you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm going to go home and finish my Lego project. I'll see you guys on the next episode of DFW Grit.